Like, yeah, time is a commodity that is hard to come by, but if every good person were to mentor even one, think of what the world would be. And then I gave an example of one time I was in Nashville. The Sudicum Planetarium was opening, and they had a Mars rover scientist there, and then I was going to do my Janet's Planet Solar System show. Well, I don't know if you go to my website, you'll see I've got this blue suit. And this guy, and I'm not kidding, took a good look at me up and down in my suit that actually my mother made. I told you on Monday that it's like we rub 2 nickels and some duct tape together sometimes on Janet's Planet. And he looked me up and down, looked at my ring finger and says, "Oh, you must be married. Do you do this just as a hobby?" It's a wonder I didn't punch a Mars rover scientist in the face, but I have a little diplomacy. So in very short order, a young lady came up and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I see you on public television. It's Janet's Planet." And so by that time, I had an army of people wanting my autograph, Mars rover scientist. Take that for part-time. And so the program's about to begin, and what he says is, he leans over and he goes, "I've landed 2 Mars rovers. I don't have any fans." I was like, "Yeah, but you don't have your own planet either." But in the middle of his speech, obviously a learned guy, obviously brilliant, he gets to a concept called delta V. I mean, it's thrust, it's momentum. How can you not enjoy? I mean, I want to play that on the playground, right? Delta V. So a young man, about 10 years old, raises his hand. "Sir, what is delta V?" And bless the gentleman's heart, he could not think abstractly enough to help this young 10-year-old understand the concept. He went straight back to a formula and missed a very teachable moment. I was sitting there as a layperson going, "All right, instead of talking vertically, let's talk horizontally. You know that gravity well, your couch, and you know how well it kind of sucks you in as you're playing your video game? And then you know the momentum it takes for you to get up and actually take the trash out. So what we're talking about is thrust and momentum in the horizontal plane. Delta V is in the vertical plane." And so I'm sharing this with the said industry dude in suit with tie. And yesterday as we walked to the lunch, and he's like, "Well, sometimes we scientists, we're so involved in the equations, we can't really think abstractly." Again, I'm a little bit like Lucy and Charlie Brown. Again, I wanted to punch somebody in the face because I go, "By goodness, come to me. I will teach you some acting lessons and I will help you think abstractly, you little scientist, you, because the nerd in me loves you. The actress and the performer in me wants you to get to the point where you can think abstractly so that we can inspire people like this wonderful lady right here, my friend Alexander, who is 16 and has come back and has volunteered to be my intern. I'm going to take him up on that. We must start saying yes. And as my panel, whenever you guys are all mic'd up, I didn't know, this is my soapbox, and I will say it until I go to Mars. I may go with Elon Musk if he'll have me. Come on out, give them a big round of applause. And so by way of introduction of inspiring support and public engagement, you just got my piece. It's like, let us be able to take part, share, and really celebrate all of those who think in various ways, celebrate that and collaborate and decide to do a little teamwork. Now, we're going to do this a little differently. They can speak better. Sometimes we all are our better spokespersons. We're going to begin right here with the lovely Susan Poulton, and then we'll go in order. Jancy, Don, and Larissa, and Stephen. And again, I saved the Lego fun for last over there. So without further ado, again, make them feel welcome, and we'll get started with Susan. Thanks so much for being here, everybody.
Thanks. Oh, well, my slides are very simple. I'm Susan Poulton. I'm a digital media strategist, and basically what that means is that I tell stories using just about every digital platform available. And so it could be web, it could be social, it could be mobile, and how all of those work together to tell stories. And just a little bit on my background, I was 10 years at AOL, and when AOL was the internet, way back when. And then 7 years at National Geographic, and really have had the privilege to work on a lot of broad-reaching digital science communication projects, from James Cameron's dive to the Mariana Trench, digital search for Genghis Khan's tomb, covered the space shuttle program and NASA for many, many years. So I think I started doing science communication outreach when I went to space camp, and I got it put in the newspaper when I was 12. But we have a lot more platforms at our disposal now. I am a little different in the sense that I don't do STEM outreach or student or kid outreach. I really target the general public. I go for everybody because I believe we are all students. I think there's an intense amount of focus, as there should be, on reaching students and getting in the classroom and STEM outreach. But the general public is really where I think it's very important to spend a lot of time and energy. And I also do not, as I said, my slides are very simple. I don't want to preach to the converted. Talking to science enthusiasts is so easy. You have them at hello, like you're all here, everybody. I want to reach the unreachable. And so the kinds of projects that I do, and I think the internet and social media is incredibly helpful in that sense, is that it can go really, really broad and it can reach everyone globally. And I want, I consider it successful if, somebody in a diner in some corner of the world is talking about something science related when they never ever thought that they would ever think about or talk about that topic. That's a win. When we've got everyone at every level of the global community talking about science. And so I like to do really unique and engaging programs that take very unique tactics on social media to get to those people, and that also requires it to be packaged in a certain way that's going to make it, sort of palatable and accessible to as many people as possible, and that's really fun, and it's why I like to do it. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that what you guys are all trying to do is not small. These projects are not small, and they require global support, and they require an entire community, everyone on the planet being on board with it, informed about it, and supporting it to pull off, like going to Mars or going to the moon or doing anything in space requires a huge community of support. And I would just end by saying that I am extremely optimistic about science communication right now. And I would not have said the same thing 5 years ago, having been doing this for about 15 years or so. There was a change about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think Mars Curiosity had something to do with it, but I have whole theories that I can go into on why I think it happened. But you started to see a change. Science programs started to be more accessible, and I used to sit around in rooms at National Geographic and in the channel, and oh, no way we can put that on TV. And then Brain Games became the highest rated show on the channel. Took everybody by surprise. And Cosmos and all of these programs that were shelved before because they just simply couldn't get viewership around them were some of the highest rated shows, and started to have social media sites dedicated entirely to science outreach and communication. So I think we're in the perfect time to do this and reach the public and talk to them about science.
She had me when she said she wanted to reach the unreachable. I was like, more of that.
Yeah.
All right, Jancy.
So I'm going to get up because unlike most Martians, I can't actually rotate my head 360 degrees. So my slides are also quite simple, but they're images. How do I do this? Wait, that's going backward.
There
we go. Okay. So this is actually about how do we inspire, and we're talking about public engagement. And so it's very important when we're discussing public engagement to understand the frame of reference of the people or references of the people that you're trying to reach, and also to understand your own potentially limiting frames of references. So I'm going to do my true confessions thing here, and I'm going to tell you that I'm actually a neuroscientist. And I did 17 years of laboratory research, and then I came to NASA, and my job was to coordinate international research programs. And I learned a lot from those experiences, and we're here to talk about public communication, but let me tell you, trying to get a bunch of space scientists, engineers, and medical doctors to understand each other is no simple feat. So I'm really sensitive to what it takes to really communicate appropriately. And I was lucky enough to be inspired not only by my science teachers, but also by the music, English, and theater teachers that I was exposed to. And I really did dabble in music and theater, and I've always felt that one of the best ways to allow myself to contribute most effectively was to find ways for me to use all the different skills that I was accumulating, both analytical and creative. And so both the scientist and the musical actor side of me have influenced the work that I'm going to talk about a little bit today. And basically what we do with the Humans in Space art program is that we really try to bridge science and engineering with arts. And by the arts, I mean music, film, literature, and visual arts of all various types. Because I think that that's a really good technique that will allow us to reach a very diverse community and a diverse set of target audiences. So for the Humans in Space art program, what we do, it's very simple. We have many projects with different target audiences, but every one of them has two basic steps. First thing we do is we invite people to learn about space and science and engineering and the technology behind all of that. And then we invite them to tell us about the future of space. But the caveat is they have to communicate to us creatively. So they have to write us a symphony. They have to compose a poem or a short film or paint a picture or create a sculpture of some sort. So then we take all of that multimedia artwork and we kick it back out. So we've touched the participants, but now we use what they've created and create displays and performances around the world to now engage an even larger community. And it's a very simple philosophy, but that's what we do. And in that way, we can touch people in many different ways, both as active participants and also as viewers and listeners. So in this picture, we have a 16-year-old boy who composed a symphony for us, and he was able to actually conduct an orchestra playing his piece live to an international space audience. And you want to talk about being a communication ambassador for space. There is nothing more effective and inspiring than listening to his music and watching him communicate. So I did mention that children are our audience, but so are university students and early career professionals, and we even have opportunities for professional artists to work with us. And in this way, we can reach out to multiple target audiences around the world. We can use an accessible language. It's varied. It's laden both with intellect and emotions. It allows people to be interested and motivated and understand the impact of space on their lives more effectively. We can reach people who already identify themselves with space and science and technology, but we can also reach those who don't yet identify or think about space. And we effectively create a dialogue, which just echoes a lot of the things we've been hearing today. We empower the people who are creating the artwork to communicate and relay their ideas about the future. So it's not just outreach, it's also inreach. And we have a chance to train them about the space and the science, but we also have a chance to stimulate their imaginations and their own personal innovation. And all of that works towards our benefits when we're trying to engage people. So what this combination of the arts with space science does is it really connects the public to space travel. And it gives what we do meaning and purpose. So here's astronaut Terry Virts actually viewing a winning video from a recent video challenge that we had. And he's enjoying this video on the ISS, and he tweeted that down to Earth. And so we have this personal connection to something that was created by the public with space. And then we also have the potential for the amplification of that through social media and virality. And we've talked a lot about looking for life on Mars. Well, here's a piece from India done by a 15-year-old boy, and it's called Found Life. And this is really, the story behind this is that these astronauts have been searching for life everywhere. And this is the poignant moment when they have actually discovered it. And you can feel the emotion with that hand on the shoulder of one astronaut to the others. That's an ambassador for space. That gets people wanting to know more. and wanting to be a part of it and invested in the future of space. And so we really think that art has a tremendous power to make people get educated and also connected to space, to relay not just the science and the technology and the realities and the challenges, but also the wonder, the emotion, the value, and the impact of journeying together as humans to Mars.
Thank you. Darsh, Deepak, if you were here, is Darsh here? You guys have got to know each other. Yeah, I thought about it the other day. I thought this is a great connection. That's what I do. Just so you know, I gather people into my Good People Network, so beware. All right, next we have Don Thomas, who I met virtually last summer when I was teaching in science in Trinidad. He Skyped with over 600 students. And afterwards, as I'm out doing my Janet's Planet Solar System show, as kind of a reward or kind of sometimes a competition with the teachers, I'll offer a Skype session with either an astronaut or a Mars rover scientist. And Don's just finished one last week. He's going to do two for me to follow up with a place in South Carolina I was recently. So everybody make Don Thomas feel welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janet. I want to start with this picture. And 54 years ago, Tuesday of this week, we launched the first American into space, Alan Shepard, May 5th, 1961. And at my elementary school up in Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up, they brought all the students to the gymnasium. I sat on the floor, watched the launch on a small black and white TV. And as soon as that launch was over that day, I said to myself, I want to do that. And that is the power of inspiration and, outreach that we're here to talk about today. So I know firsthand how that can change a life. I was 6 years old at that time. I was 39 years old, when I first launched on my first mission. But I got inspired, I got moved by an event, and it could be a teacher talking to you, it could be a concert, it could be, seeing something in the news, but you get inspired through these outreach programs, and it drove me my whole life to go into space. And 8 years ago, I retired from NASA, and I took a job at Towson University, just an hour north of here, a little north of Baltimore, and I do STEM outreach these days. And people say, were you sorry to leave NASA? And I said, there hasn't been a day that I've been sitting at my desk or I'm out in a school where I say, gee, I wish I had stayed there. I'm so happy doing outreach. I found a really good follow-on career. One of the things I do is I go out to schools and do school visits. I do 70 to 80 schools around the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Area every year, talk to the students about the excitement of space exploration. One thing I like to do with the students, I have a small Martian meteorite, a piece that came from Mars, and to allow young students to actually touch a real piece of Mars in their hand. And I tell them, if you want to go see the real thing, get going in school today. But for them to see it and to touch a real piece of Mars, you see the light shine in their eyes doing that. I also do virtual classroom visits, as Janet pointed out, and this has allowed me to go around the planet. I've done these virtual classroom visits in South Africa, UK, India, Trinidad, Portugal, and I do them at schools across the United States, so it doesn't limit you anymore by your regional area. And it's been a great way for me to reach many other audiences. I also run a Saturday morning science program at Towson University where we bring in different scientists, engineers, and mathematicians to talk to young students about the fun of science and the joy of science. And these, our target audience is roughly kids in grades 2 through 8, but we've got younger kids and older kids coming as well. And it's a great way to spark their imagination again, to connect them with people. I want some young student sitting in the audience, saying, I can become, somebody going down to Antarctica to search for meteorites. I can do that? It's like, yes, you can. And that's what we hope to do through these programs. And I end with this picture. This is one I frequently show when I go out and talk to schools. This is looking in the future for the first, we'll call it the first human landing on Mars. And to the right of the spacecraft, you see our first two humans, Earthlings, setting foot on the planet Mars. And I'll tell you, 10 years ago, I would show this picture, and I'll ask students, you know who those two astronauts are? And 9 times out of the 10, one of the reply would be, one's me, and the other is Neil Armstrong. And I'd tell the students, oh, you got that wrong. We're way too old. I'm 30 years from now, I'm going to be 90, NASA's not sending me to Mars. And so the point is, this is them. And today when I show this picture, probably 8 out of the 10 times when I ask, you know who those astronauts are, I've got young students saying, well, that's us. That's me. It's not that old astronaut up here talking to us today. That is really powerful. And that is from outreach, that we get our students to envision their future, that they see themselves. It's more important that they see themselves in this picture and not see me doing that. And I think that's the power of outreach that we're here to talk about. So I'll pass that on.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Next
That one
is
there, too.
Larissa Shelkin. We actually served together in an organization called STEM Space. Most of these people had never met, only virtually until today, so this is great to see everyone. And you have so many things she's involved in. I want to let her tell you her story.
How you can go after the hero, the astronaut. So I knew that this will be my turn, and I just really put just couple slides, because you can't go after such a fantastic person like you on a panel discussion. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Larissa Shelkin, as Janet said, and I am a CEO and founder of Global STEM Education Center. A few words about my professional background. That's okay. We can go back.
Go back one. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I am studying global education at Harvard University in Boston and Cambridge, and I am a fellow for education policy here in Washington, D.C., and also in Boston Rainey Center. Just a couple words about my professional background. I'm a professional engineer and working as an engineer in engineering research for most of my life. And I gradually switched to education because I felt that there is a tremendous need for experienced engineers and scientists to really help educators in what they do, because this is a big task of educating the next generation and inspiring them to do and follow the professional footsteps. I think we very well do it together. So, and I know educators greatly appreciated every opportunity they have working together with professional engineers, and I'm truly privileged to do that. So my message and my philosophy and my viewpoint on space exploration came from also my childhood. I originally am from Bashkortostan, from South Ural Mountain Republic in Russia, and I was always fascinated to look into the global collaboration in space exploration. And that's where my message is coming from, the way how I see this from the perspective of really strengthening our relationship with one another. This is a very small, tiny little planet, and it's a very lonely planet if you take a look at the sky, into the sky. And we really need to look around and realize how lonely planet that is. And I think when people ask me why we go to Mars, and my students, and I believe they're absolutely right, they say it's fascinating to go to Mars, but one of the biggest lessons that we might have and the goals that we have in mind, it's just really learning about ourselves. Just sometimes just going somewhere and looking back into your home, just realize what you really have. It's just very important, even just based on your personal experience, when you go far from your home and start all of a sudden missing your home and seeing it from the different light and different perspectives. So I think if we will go to Mars and take a quick look at our lonely planet, we probably would coming back and appreciate really, really much more. What we have is truly unique. All we have is each other. So, and if you take a look at that perspective, and that's what I do when I work with legislators. I bring that perspective, and I'm seeing my role of reminding them how important that is. And sometimes during the day, and we have all busy schedules, we keep forgetting the impact of what we do and what we vote for. You really need to think about big picture. And my students really never let me forget about that. And I'm very excited about the next generation, because if I would not be having a privilege to work with students in a classroom, I probably sometimes would be much more concerned about where we're going and what we're going to do. But believe me, having a privilege to work with young students and young generation really gives me a huge hope. We give them, they take the torch from our hands. We leave our planet in a condition what we leave it in, and they are going to take the torch from us and take it from down there. That's my goal, was really doing the outreach and helping the new generation to learn from us as much as possible. And they do an excellent job. Few words about Global STEM Education Center and the programs that we do. We're really privileged to work with NASA, who help us to develop really interesting and challenging engineering and scientific projects. In a global classroom, our students are literally sitting in a global classroom. They do homework together, they do projects together, they present together, and teachers also have a fantastic opportunity because they teach globally. So it's a fantastic opportunity for teachers for professional development. So in our classroom, we enroll students from all around the world. And for example, one of the projects that they're currently working on, it's related to International Space Station, but we see it from the engineering perspectives. So they take a very specific engineering project and work on them, like wiring on, what kind of wiring system is there in International Space Station, or what even, not even, I shouldn't say that, but a fantastic school, Blackstone Vocational Technical School in Upton, Massachusetts. And if you see me, they were planning on using the opportunity and see it on online. So hello down there. Plumbers. They work on plumbing system on the International Space Station. So think about it, the complexity of the problems in the International Space Station from engineering and scientific perspectives. It's just not that easy. To make it safe, reliable, and very productive, there is a lot of engineering work involved, a lot of teamwork involved. And the complexity and advanced level of that problem just require for educators to include this into their curriculum in K through 12. We literally think that we need to rethink our education starting from elementary school, because we live in a different time, we have different challenges, and we have a very interesting road in front of us. So we need to equip our next generation with a better education. So that's my part of the presentation, and this is my privilege to give you this. The next slide is yours.
Yeah, one more over. There we go. And let's give Larissa a big round of applause. And Stephen Pakbaz, we did a webisode on him last summer for Janet's Planet, and again, just immediately kind of enjoyed and really appreciated his good work. So everybody welcome Stephen. He's going to tell you about all the cool things he does as an engineer.
Well, I'm Stephen Pakbaz. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work at Orbital ATK, which is just a little way down in Dulles, Virginia. Basically, I was in high school. I saw the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time, and it was the first time I'd seen, the exploration of the solar system portrayed realistically, without the warp drives or hyperdrives or anything else. And from that instant forward, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So all through high school, I had my note paper graph books that I filled with designs for manned missions to the moons of Jupiter and things like that. And I'd soak up any piece of information I could that would tell me how something like that would work. And I often used Lego elements to help model my spaceships and designs and sort of put everything in order and keep things assembled. Apparently it paid off pretty well, because it helped me to know what I wanted to do. So all my school studies from then on in college and getting my master's is all focused on mechanical and aerospace engineering, which really helped. And soon afterwards, I was working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and the first spacecraft I got to work on was the Curiosity Mars rover, which was awesome. And all I wanted to do was tell everyone what I was working on and how it was going to go to Mars and all the cool stuff it would do. But at the time, the actual rover was spread into hundreds of little bits and pieces all over the entire lab. So it was hard to really show my friends and family how it worked. And my side hobby has always been Lego. And I had the idea to make a Lego Mars rover so I could show my friends what I was doing at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory before the rover was done and before it had launched. And through that little model, which is just barely 300 pieces, I was introduced to a website called Lego Ideas, where just regular people can submit ideas for sets they'd like to see Lego make. And if you get 10,000 people to support your idea, and if it passes Lego's internal review process, they'll actually mass produce your set. And so with some incredible timing, I submitted my model to the site when the rover launched, so people were finally coming to learn what the rover was and what it was going to do. It achieved 10,000 supporters right after the rover landed, and soon after that, it was a set you could buy, and it was great because kids could learn all about the Mars rover. The instruction booklet had all sorts of little bits of information about what the rover was doing and the different parts on it, and they could, sort of experience what the rover was doing on Mars with their own little model at home to better understand what was going on up there. And basically, the little Lego rover model led to lots of other experiences and opportunities for educational outreach, and I just sort of went with it. I'd go to museums and talk about all sorts of different spacecraft that are coming up or are in space now and what they're doing. And that would lead to all sorts of other things, articles and interviews. And I'd hear from school teachers who would, before the rover was an actual set, I made my own set of step-by-step instructions so that anyone could build their own version of the rover and play with it before the real set came out. And at the time, I didn't know if it ever would come out. And I heard from teachers who used the instructions to help instruct their classrooms and things like that. And it was just a lot of fun. I met a lot of people who were fans of space, a lot of people who worked in space. And it was just a great way to continue to enjoy what I do, meet people and make connections. And I think the best part of the whole experience was I'd see online kids who would take my instructions that I made and they'd try to build their own rover. Either it wasn't out or the rover wasn't available or things like that. And they didn't always have all the right pieces and parts to make an exact replica. So they would use their own collection and make substitutions for color and parts and things like that. And it was just amazing because you could really tell that they were really interested in learning more about this rover and how it worked. And in order to actually make it, even if they didn't have all the pieces, you had to learn a lot about the rover. And whether the kids who built it knew it or not, you could tell they learned a lot about engineering, coming up with alternate solutions to make something work the same way that the real rover did in my instructions. And it was just one of my favorite parts of the whole experience. And I'm just glad that, as a fan of Lego and space and how Lego inspired me, I wanted to sort of do the same thing and use Lego and space to inspire the next generation of engineers and even adults too. So I still do displays and things like that. I've made other spacecraft. I have instructions for a few of them, and it's just been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy talking to people, especially kids who enjoy Lego and space, about what's going on and what they can do and how they can build Lego ships and real ships in the future.
Give my panelists a big round of applause. I have some questions, but I would really love to open it up to you guys to come forward and use these mics and please ask these great people just their ideas. So come on down, line up on both sides, and pose some questions for us. Looks like you're first, sir.
Hi. I have the pleasure of working with Civil Air Patrol doing outreach in aerospace education, so I'm taking a bit of inspiration from you folks. And Don Thomas, I'd really like to talk with you about interacting with squadrons in Maryland Wing. But as a general question, do you folks think that the current situation and the progress and the upwelling of the Mars One enterprise has been an aid or sort of a problem in outreach to convince people about Mars? How do you think that's interacting with the problem of convincing folks to go to Mars?
Anybody on the Mars One question?
You know, I get asked that question a lot. I think one thing that it's done, it's made kids more aware of going to Mars. We're sending humans to Mars, so that's the positive side. On the negative side, the kids think that's the only path. That's the only program going on. It's getting the most attention right now. We've got some incredible rovers on Mars. We've had them there. We're doing the work right now to develop the rockets with the Space Launch System to get us to Mars. So they're unaware of some of that. But overall, I think it raises everybody's attention about Mars and the idea of going to Mars. And however we get there, we'll work that out. But to have these young students thinking about sending humans to Mars in their lifetime in the very near future, I think that's a positive thing.
And I would say that one of the things that just watching it all unfold, and especially in social media, and online, which can be a really cluttered space, I think I would totally agree. It raises Mars into the conversation, and that's always good. But one of the challenges I think that's happening now is that there is a lot of mixed messages going out to the public. We can get there in 2 years. We know it's going to take 30. No, we can be there tomorrow, but you won't come back. But if we go in 30, you can come home. And robotic missions are better. And so a lot of this dialogue, which is great to have, is playing itself out in the public space. And that can have both positive and negative effects, because now there's a lot of confusion. I thought, and as far as the messaging, especially around timing, like when are we going to go? Like everybody wants to know, when are we going to go? And Mars One, I think, complicated that by saying we'll be there in 2 years. Oh no, and then there can be some disappointment in that. Like, yeah, it's not very inspiring to say, oh, we're going to be there in 30 years, but it's also less inspiring to say that we're going to be there in 2 years, and then 2 years rolls around and it's 2 more years, and 2 years rolls around and it's 2 more years, and the public's not kind of tires, I think, of that conversation continuously. So.
And I totally agree with that. I think that the first step is you have to get people interested and inspired, and I think that Mars One has actually helped with that. But then it is our responsibility to follow up with that and constantly provide more resources with the information, the facts, what do we know now, and to keep the inspiration going our own ways as well, so that's not the only form of inspiration that's out there.
And I can add a couple words. From my perspective, we're digging into the engineering part of it. And now, if you're watching, many thanks to NASA, legendary Charles Pellerin and Frank Martin. I don't know if you read book, NASA, How NASA Built Teams. It's very inspiring, interesting, big, strongly recommend to read it. But we discussing engineering challenges, and we're talking in our global STEM classroom about the challenges, specific engineering challenges about the orbiting Mars versus landing on Mars. So you probably can talk about this more than I do, but it's just in general, just if you would be sitting in our classroom and listening the level of knowledge and excitement of 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, you would just try to pinch yourself and just say, are these like MIT grad students or 7th grade public school? Like, where am I? Because the level of interest and the level of knowledge and passion is just mind-blowing, to be honest with you. I honestly can say I'm learning from my students much more than they learn from us. Because, and this is actually one of the changes in education. Students are becoming the owner of the classroom. They are the ones who take this in their own hands. So, and also, I would like to really reemphasize what I'm strongly standing for, and our students really studying it and digging deeper into the human relations part. And you probably know that Russian astronauts with American astronauts now flying for a unique 1-year length mission on International Space Station for the purpose of really testing how it's just basically one of the steps of us preparing our human resources to fly for the Mars. It's not that simple. we are as a creatures, we are complicated people, and just really need to study ourselves, what it is that we do and how we do it and how we can do it better together. So together, that's my word that I would like to leave you with.
What's your question?
So it's actually a little interesting that I'm asking this question to a panel that's majority female, because that's sort of a rare thing to see in engineering conferences. But one thing I've noticed, I mentored undergrad students and a few other things, and it seems to be somewhat of a challenge in a very male-dominated field to get young women interested in aerospace engineering and engineering in general. So I was wondering if you guys had any experience with that, any thoughts, suggestions, or comments on that topic.
So, go ahead.
Me? Okay. Thank you for your question. I could not even ask you to really come up and do it, because I'm really standing strongly, and I spent many, many years for advocating for women, bringing them to engineering. I'm a vice president of Society of Women Engineers in Boston, and I really spend a lot of effort advocating and bringing more girls into engineering. So I did work for aerospace in education and training myself, not in an engineering capacity. But there are a lot of efforts in bringing, and United States is actually one of the strongest country who does a lot in bringing females into engineering. Personally, I was privileged to run on behalf of Society of Women Engineers summer camp, NASA space camp for girls, and it's just what they do there. If you look into their website, it's just really amazing. And if any of your students, females, girls interested in going, this is one of the best places to go. So yes, I run MIT summer camps for girls in engineering. So a lot of things are happening, and why some people just asking diversity and women, and why we pursue this. Besides, it's a good thing to do, and it's a great thing to have. But from engineering perspective, all of the above. But we need different perspectives in problem solving. So females and males, that we bring different nuances to problem solving. So if you only are going to include certain people into your team, they're going to create similar solutions. But a lot of times, especially when you're dead end, in terms of really not knowing what to do next, you need to bring someone with a fresh perspective, with different experience, and that's why we so flourished when we build such diverse engineering and scientific teams. And women play an important role in any engineering field. So thank you for your question.
Yes. And then Jancy, add to that.
So I just wanted to add a little bit of sort of like a case study experience that we've had with our work. So we do get a lot of women participating in our events at the children's level, the professional level, and also at the undergraduate level. And a couple of years ago, one of the winners in our video challenge competition was a 13-year-old girl who made a wonderful video using claymation, talking about, going to Mars and all of that. And she was one of the lucky few who actually got to be part of our Visiting Artist program and come to Houston to a scientific meeting where her work was presented and shake hands with astronauts and engineers and scientists and talk about her views of the future. Well, I was standing with her mother, and her mother said, in the last 2 hours, my daughter has just grown up. It's incredible. I can't believe it. Well, 2 years later, this young girl, now 15, came back and submitted another video. And her mother, unsolicited, loved to take credit, but I can't, wrote back and said that her daughter had created this video, but she'd also written a companion book. And she now was a local ambassador to all the kindergartens in her larger region. And she went to the kindergartens specifically to explain to the girls in the classes that they need to grow up and do science and engineering. And it's just a spectacular story, and I think that that's what we need to do, and we need to encourage others to do. Everybody's got a role, and I think stuff like that is spectacular, and that's how you inspire.
And I have to say that it's like the wonderful creator of Goldie blocks and those kinds of things. I told this young lady that smart's the most beautiful thing you can ever be, and so aim for smart, and you got a lot of things covered. I am finding more and more that as the science conversation has increased, that I don't think it's as scary a proposition. I think it is a call to those of us as female that we even resound and mentor some of our young ladies to make sure that they follow those scientific fields. But I think it's happening. I just think that a lot of times it's probably been historical, but I sense in the classroom it's very much changing. Would you say that, Don?
Yeah, one thing that I've done in my Saturday science programs, I try to bring in a lot of female speakers, scientists and engineers too, so the young girls in the audience can see themselves in the speaker up there. I do that with all the minorities, try to do that. And we get about 50% boys, 50% girls, in attendance, when you wouldn't guess that. You would think probably 90% little boys in there, but a lot of young girls, and I'll bet if we look recently, it's even more, 51% women going into science, the young girls there. But I think by taking speakers, making sure you emphasize we have female scientists, engineers, astronauts, flight directors throughout the system, and bring them in so that they can see themselves in the person speaking up there in front of them. It's a great motivator.
Jen, just one sentence. For audience online who are watching, and this event is streamed online, thank you, NASA Women Group. You are fantastic. And thank you, all girls, Society of Women Engineers, all members of Professional Society of Women Engineers. You go, girl. You just go and get it. And I'm professional women engineer. We are in this business together. We are all together. We can only succeed together, and we need to bring all. And when I say all, I mean all.
And your question, my dear. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is totally a self-serving question. I'd really like to meet every single one of you afterward, and I don't want to have to chase you all over the place. And so I wanted to
We'll hang out right up there for you.
But the thing is, I think awe goes with inspiration. And for me, my first, what you call piloerection, which is goosebumps, was when I came out of my Astronomy 101 class in 2008 and saw Vega and Altair. And I had read the book from Korea about Qingyu and Kyonyu, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at it from the same latitude practically that the people in China, in Korea do. And so I was really excited about that connection for my way. So I've done a storytelling festival, which is the 3-day program of mixing the arts and the sciences. I've worked with kids to create a planetarium show at Air and Space Museum with their own sky stories, and recently a film of kids narrating the quotes of astronauts and cosmonauts as they go to space, so you hear children's voices instead of adults. That's being submitted to DC Shorts. But I need maybe particularly Jancy McVee's help and also Susan Polton's, because I just got accepted. I am no scientist, okay? Well, yes, I am, okay?
We're all natural born scientists.
But an ISS proposal for the conference, which is to use, it's called Citizen Science in the Cupola, and it's Steam It Up, and and it's connecting neuroscience with new stories. And so I would really like a lot of help if I can get it from anybody, because it has to do with downstreaming having the astronauts wear EEGs on their head while they're looking at Earth from space and see what's going on in their heads, and then have kids have mobile EEGs on their heads in classrooms so that they can compare when do they get awe, when do they have it. So wow. I need help. I'm just me and one other friend. So anything you can do to contribute to this, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I'm sure we'd all be happy to help.
Yeah, sign us up.
To emphasize what Larissa keeps saying, it's going to take a giant village. It's humanity going to Mars, humanity talking about Mars, across the nations, different viewpoints, different emotional perspectives and intellectual perspectives. So, we'd be happy to talk to you.
You, my dear.
I'm Greta Holby. I'm an MIT grad, but I'm also an opera director and an opera creator. And I just love how everyone here is talking about together. And so this isn't really a question, but I wish that there were as many people in the audience here as the first day, because I feel as though probably most of the people here are all in some way either really interested or involved in what all of you are involved in. For the opera, which is called The Three Astronauts, which is about the race of the three superpowers to Mars, based on a book by Umberto Eco, I've just begun this outreach component for this 21st century vernacular opera. It's not an old-fashioned opera. And we have an app that we've just started with a high school of the performing arts in New York called, I don't know how we got the name, Occupy Mars. And just as the people who have just come to speak or ask questions, and a lot of you and all of you have, it was Jancy who suggested, I think, or maybe it was Janet, both of whom I've had the pleasure to meet, who suggested that somehow we all work together on this app with the content that people are creating. And so even if you don't see me, both Janet and Jancy have my contact information. I'm also at the opera convention down the street, so I have to sort of run away after this. But I would like to say that I'd love to have everyone be able to share their videos on this app. And if you have any ideas also about that, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. And certainly, I know that I have Greta's email, so if anybody's interested in the Three Astronauts opera and other things and the app, let me know. You, my dear.
Good morning. My name is Jillian Pierce. I do government affairs for the Space Foundation. So I'm particularly interested, what I do is I educate Congress and elected officials about how cool and awesome space is. I am a lawyer by background. I did go to space camp. So I was one of those people who was caught early, but not quite bitten by the science tech bug. I'm really interested in tangible products like these Mars rover Lego things. Kate Spade did an awesome space cadet collection where you could buy a space shuttle purse. What other ideas, aside from tangible items, we're talking about the real importance of educating kids and getting them inspired. I talk to elected officials. How do we inspire the general voting public to push that discussion further and not lose that generation?
It's inspiring the kids. I heard you, because it's kind of like sometimes I'll go give a Janet's Planet message, and then a parent will follow up with me and say, my kid won't shut up about this. So sometimes it's like get it in the ears of an 8-year-old and let them just honk that horn. The other thing is I think it is like Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about, it's that, the problem isn't kids. It's how do we create science appreciation, science awareness, science literacy for what I believe Susan really is lovely in talking about. How do we reach the unreachable? Also, how do we get even our politicians and our elected officials to care about, we all talk, I'm going to say something that I hope, I'll just say it. We all talk about wanting education. We talk about reform and how much we want it. And then we stalemate with a bunch of formulaic stuff that doesn't work, when I know that my good teacher over here at Maplewood High School is doing incredible things, probably a little outside of maybe how the framework works. However, I just go, it's like we have to have some very dedicated people saying yes and listening. But then I'd love to hear your thoughts about how do we create that care? How do we create the relationship with the product, which is space and science? How do we create that? Because I think you got to care about it to have a relationship with it, to have an appreciation for it. And I'm not sure I know that answer, other than I will keep honking my horn. Anybody?
Maybe I'll speak a little bit about this. I think it's very important to educate parents as well as students. A lot of times, and I found based on my own experience, it's very important to remind not only parents and students, but ourselves. To be honest with you, yes, we look up to to the stars, and we think about Mars, which is I'm very excited about. But we also need to remember about our own planet, and we sometimes keep forgetting that the NASA is doing a fantastic job in monitoring the condition of our planet. And I hope that we will remember and realize that we need to really strengthen that activity, because we don't want to wait until all of a sudden we will have no water or no air. Then everybody would just say, what you were talking about engineering? What is it that you were talking about, the importance of science? I hope we will not come to that point to remember about this policy. It will be no time for policy. If you would have no water, if you would have no air, if you would have a contaminated soil, what it is, where you would go. And maybe even if you just scale back and just give it a smaller examples that really related to people's everyday life. A lot of, sometimes people just keep forgetting how extremely important to go to space and look back to our planet Earth. Somebody has to monitor 24/7 condition of our small planet. And who does it? Thank you very much. So astronauts and engineers and scientists, and that's very important to remember.
And I would actually jump in and say one of the things that it's continuity. I mean, you can start inspiring when you're a kid and they're all into it, but you know, I always hear teachers say this, you lose them at like age 13 and they're done. And this is with going back to women and getting girls inspired, is you can get girls inspired, but if they don't have support all the way through high school and all the way through college to continue on that path, which is where we lose them. They drop out in their sophomore year of college because they're in a male-dominated lab, they're the only woman, and there's no other women supporting them, and so they leave. And so it's not just about inspiration, it's about support and having support networks to take you all the way through. And I think that also goes to the message as well. You gotta be able to package that message in ways that are gonna reach you at all the stages of your life after you leave school and you're in high school and then you're in college and then you're a parent or you know, just a general consumer of that. You want it to be out there in every possible way. I love the Legos because, you know, honestly, interestingly enough, for the Hill, and I had a very recent experience going door to door with Explore Mars on the Hill, and that was my first time doing that, and they all have models in their office. And everyone comes to me and they want, you know, we want to change Congress's mind, so what do we do digitally? And I said, nothing, because they're not online. It's not where they're getting their information. It's not where they're getting their information. You go door to door, you do it in physical things. So you do have to tailor that message to your audience, and reaching the Hill is very different than reaching people at all these different stages in their lives. So.
Sounds like we need to give them all a Curiosity rover there. Stephen, we'll call Lego and see if we can.
Janet, about the importance of, I wish the pilots, every time when they would just say, our flight is being delayed due to the technical problem. And by the way, science and engineering education is very important.
Oh, I know. We're going to wrap it up, and I really appreciate you guys being here. Please give my panel a big round of applause. I'm going to invite you guys. We'll get unmiked, and then we will just be right out there in that little foyer. I know that Artemis probably has an announcement about a break, but I think to just a closing, and I promise I'll make this a really quick story. There was a photographer in Time magazine who was photographing the Rwandan genocide. And as he took the picture, he thought he saw a body moving. He finally convinced people to go and pull this person barely alive out. And they tried to give the gentleman a cup of water. Well, it's like he couldn't take a cup, but he could take a drop. And after 3 days, this gentleman was able to drink a whole cup. I think, to Susan's point, we can't be in all places at all time, but we are responsible for our one drop. And then collectively, as good people of the earth, then we should say, I agree to give my drop. I will do it to K through 5th graders. You guys do middle school, high school, universities. And it is that continual saying yes to giving your own good drop to fill that cup. Thank you so much.